decades of zoning has shown it's actually a very effective way to help protect the community as a whole. So, others were against it because they own a home or are a permanent resident here and want to rent it out when they leave for the weekend. I see that as an accessory use to a residential use and should be permitted. Others are real estate agents, second homeowners, etc., who have a personal financial stake in seeing them continue. On the other side, those who spoke for regulating short-term rentals, even to the point of removing them entirely from neighborhoods, residential neighborhoods, generally spoke only to benefit from an increased quality of life and livability in their residential neighborhoods. Those who supported our short-term regulations even included businesses such as local breweries, bicycle repair shops, downtown businesses, who may be affected by a slight dip in tourism, but who recognize also the need for business to function well, with workers at all levels being able to find a home and build a life in their community. Goal 9 economy has the phrase in our comp plan to preserve and promote the city's quality of life, including small-town atmosphere, family-oriented communities, good schools, etc. in the first part of the first line. It calls for the city to support retention and growth of strategic employment clusters and lists such industries as technology, healthcare, creative services, gear, food and beverage processing. There's certainly some crossover with tourism. These all have a more significant impact on Hood River's economy than vacation home rentals do. The argument to let the market sort out the vacation home rental sort of situation fails to take into account externalities beyond a financial bottom line, such as quality of life or community development. These social factors are as important, if not more important, to protect than dollar-only economics. Thus, it falls to the city government to find a way to protect them. There has been a great success by Oregon's zoning system to manage land use and property rights. Allowing the development of businesses in the residential zones is not the purpose of that zoning assignment. People who move into neighborhoods buy homes with the security of knowing that they will live in a neighborhood and not a commercial zone. Additionally, we receive testimony, and there have been studies in other states, that a home used as a vacation home brings in on average 40% less money to the local economy than a long-term rental or owner-occupied home. Thus, we are also working toward Goal 9 by limiting vacation home rentals in residential zones. The whole conversation began to form up most recently following the housing needs analysis, as Cindy mentioned. This document concluded that there will be adequate housing in Hood River in the next 20 years. My analysis of that conclusion is that it is built on some shaky ground. Some major assumptions were made, such as that no short-term rentals will be permitted going forward. Working on that right now. A significant amount of land in the urban growth area would be annexed and developed in the next 20 years. The agricultural land in the boundary is developed, and then a sizable portion of commercial land is used for dense housing. The fact that several of these are potentially could fall way short of their potential tells me that we have a much greater housing crisis on our hands than is telling us the conclusion that we have 21 acres, whatever that number was, available in 20 years. So we will be dealing with strategies such as affordable housing development, densification, and rewriting code on townhouses, etc. at a later date. But part of the overall strategy to provide housing for our projected populations, as we are legally compelled to do through Goal 10 of the statewide planning goals, must reduce the impact vacation home rentals growth has had and will continue to have on residential zones in the city. Goal 14, urbanization, calls for containing urban development in an area where services can be efficiently and economically provided. It calls on the city to serve the needs for housing at all levels and preserve the livability of the area. The suggestion received that we expand the urban growth area to make room for the housing and the vacation home rentals is untenable. Helping promote urban residential development within current residential zones aims at serving this goal. The 5-year amortization period that we mentioned may need to come with a hardship exception. This is something we can talk about as we continue tonight. There was a case at Oregon Supreme Court called Cope versus Cannon Beach that established regulating away short-term rentals was not taking. That 5-year amortization period did come with a hardship clause. I don't have the exact phrasing with me, but it might be something we need to work in. Hardship exception provides an exemption for property owners who can substantiate that an investment made exclusively in the non-conforming use of a dwelling or transient occupancy cannot be adequately amortized within the 5-year period between the adoption of the ordinance and the required termination date. That is many years in which to switch your home to long-term rental or sell it, or neither if that's your wish. Certainly there will be several of those according to the testimony. To summarize, what I'd like to see from the code update is that after the 5-year amortization period, I don't believe that there should be any homes run as motels in residential zones. All short-term rentals through such organizations as Airbnb and VRBO, etc., should be permitted only to full-time permanent residents of that house. With the decision on how many days a year, if any, such restriction is to be placed being established in Title V as part of the permitting process. I believe this result will increase overall housing in Hood River, protect the character of our neighborhoods, and possibly even have the unintended consequence of seeing a surge in investment and development of commercial zones for vacation home rentals.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith. Right, Commissioner Weeks.
So, like many of you and all of you, this has been something that's been brewing for a long, long time, and I'm actually really glad that we're finally here talking about it and ready to actually make some real change and something that's actually going to shape the direction that this city is going to go in. I've lived here for 9 years and have seen a lot of changes happen even in that short period of time. And I've talked to a lot of people on both sides, and it really, everybody's divided. And it's great that everybody's getting here and saying what they want to say and saying what they feel, because it's an important process. And when we take all this testimony and we hear this, I want to see that what we come up with is not seen as one way or the other and being the man up at the top, and the city is just telling everyone what they can do with their property. Because that's not what I see it as. I see this as residents of this community, the biggest number one thing, especially with Goal 10, and when I look at all these things, and what I hear from everybody is livability. And I think livability in our community is so far-reaching that it really, it touches on everything. And even those people that come here to vacation and vacation rentals, they enjoy what this town has as livability. And if we don't do something with this now and make these changes so that they are sustainable, then we're going to have a livability problem on all those floors. So when I look at that, I think, my biggest take from this and what I want to see happen is that we protect the livability of this town, but we also protect what people have put into it here. And, there's so many different, and I agree with both of you guys on all the points with schools and the other jobs and all this other kind of stuff. It's really, really important, and it all comes back to livability with me. And that's what I keep coming back to over and over and over again. Your points I agree with on the housing crisis that we have right now, and I call it a housing crisis because we don't have any more room to go. And to say, I agree with Will, and to say that we can just move out is just, I don't see that. In my research, when in looking and everything, I don't see that happening. All of the land that's not developed now and the land that is within the UGB that's not developed, for us to annex that in is just not realistic within the next 10 years from the numbers I've seen. And that's unfortunate, but it's the reality. And so we have to figure out what we're going to do now and how we're going to deal with this issue at this point. And I want it to be, my goal is it's something that's not so cumbersome and that we're not creating more problems in the future, and that it's a simple solution, and that we really look towards and to other municipalities, communities that have done the same thing, that are working on the same thing, because we don't have to create our own and invent and reinvent everything from right now. And I would like to keep the conversation going. I want it to be an amenable thing. And number one, to start off, I think we need to really start with some defining what certain things mean, especially in our code, before we can really start looking at getting down to the nuts and bolts. And with those definitions, exactly what Will said, we have to define what a residence is. We have to define what a residential use is before we can start moving into looking at those things. it's also my, I see that the direction of short-term rentals in this town, where I see that, and from all the testimony I've heard, and from what I find as our stakeholders that are, I find most with looking for housing, needing a place where they want to live, where they work, and protecting what's already here is keeping that, and the short-term rentals, that's in our residential zones, that stays within the hands of those homes that are occupied by their residents. And again, that kind of goes back to the home share and that kind of stuff, which we have to define. We have to define what those things are so that we can then come up with those solutions to, and that specific language for staff to then come up with that specific language for us to look at. That's what I see.
Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner Weeks. Commissioner Rowan?
Well, I think Rick and Will did a good job of segueing into how I came to the conclusion I did as far as looking for a code that's consistent with Goal 9 and Goal 10, and also my number one priority is ensuring the livability of our community. And I have a 6- and 8-year-old, and I want to make sure that they can live here someday if they so choose to, and it doesn't become a tourist-based economy. So looking at definitions first, I think, is a good thing,